Have you ever stepped into a room and felt like you faded into the background while someone else seemed to brighten the space simply by being there? Imagine if you could become that person, the one people instinctively gravitate toward, the one they trust and remember. In a world overloaded with distractions, true magnetism has nothing to do with looks or clever lines. It grows from mastering small, potent habits that create trust, deepen connection, and increase your influence. In this audiobook summary of How to Become a People Magnet by Mark Rillau, you will learn how to change your presence, shift your mindset, and transform your relationships without becoming someone else. Prepare to uncover the science of likability, the psychology behind influence, and the everyday behaviors that make people whisper, "There's something about them." This is the start of your change. It begins with you. Becoming magnetic is not about tricks or masks, it's about awakening the strong, authentic version of yourself that's been hidden beneath doubt, fear, and autopilot habits. Mark Rillau opens with a clear point: if you want to draw remarkable people into your life, first become a person worthy of that attraction. That doesn't require perfection. It calls for authenticity, confidence, kindness, and emotional intelligence. These are the traits that naturally attract others. In this opening section, we explore the internal shifts that truly matter. Stop performing to impress. Start showing up as you are. A common misstep is trying too hard to dazzle. Rillau stresses a simple truth: people are not pulled toward flawlessness, they're pulled toward honesty, warmth, and presence. Think about someone you instantly feel comfortable with. It's probably not because they have wealth, looks, or fame. It's because they made you feel seen, heard, and important. That is the energy you must cultivate. Embrace your history, your imperfections, and your struggles. Being genuine is magnetic. When you drop the mask, others feel safe enough to do the same. How you relate to yourself is the inner mirror that sets the tone for how others treat you. If you habitually belittle yourself, minimize your worth, or stifle your voice, others will mirror that energy back. Rillau challenges you to establish self-respect first. That means speaking to yourself kindly, setting healthy boundaries, investing in personal growth, and owning your strengths without apology. People are drawn to those who carry a quiet, steady confidence, assurance rather than arrogance. When you know who you are and what you stand for, you stop chasing approval. The right people arrive. Emotional attractiveness outlasts looks and status. It's the feeling people have when they enjoy your company and leave conversations feeling lighter. Rillau explains that emotionally attractive people listen deeply, remain composed under stress, support others without controlling them, stay optimistic, and stay grounded. These are skills you can cultivate. For example, instead of snapping back when criticized, emotional intelligence lets you pause, breathe, and respond with curiosity rather than ego. That small shift can transform the interaction and leave people impressed by your maturity. A genuine smile is one of the simplest and most powerful tools in your toolkit. It lowers tension, builds trust quickly, and makes you more approachable while mirroring positive emotions in others. Smiling isn't about faking cheerfulness, it's about reconnecting with joy. When you smile with presence, when the warmth is real rather than performative, you change the room's energy. That is influence. People sense energy before hearing words. Pause and consider what you radiate. Do you complain frequently? Do you move through life stressed, distracted, resentful, or envious? Those invisible currents push people away. By contrast, curiosity, lightness, and genuine enthusiasm, even in small measures, make you feel like a breath of fresh air in a noisy world. Your energy is your message, begin aligning it with the person you aim to be. If this feels overwhelming, remember that magnetism is built with tiny, steady wins. Rilau's advice is simple: don't try to overhaul everything at once. Build momentum through small, consistent habits. Each morning, say one truthful, positive line to yourself. Practice active listening with a single person each day. Offer a sincere smile to a stranger. Give an honest compliment. Catch yourself before reacting harshly and take a breath. These small acts are votes for the person you are becoming. Becoming magnetic is not memorizing lines or mimicking charismatic people. It is becoming more of yourself, without apology. When you begin to align with your value, attraction becomes effortlessness. Genuine, inspiring people will be drawn to you naturally. If you want to deepen your transformation, watch how you speak and how you listen. Those are the bridges to others. If you share your journey on platforms like Momentum Audiobooks, your authenticity will connect with people who are searching for real change and practical habits that stick. Keep the focus inward and practical, build presence, cultivate calm, and practice kindness. The rest follows. Listen more than you speak. When you want to become someone people naturally gravitate toward, the way you communicate becomes your bridge to others. Most people listen with the aim of replying, magnetic people listen with the aim of understanding. That subtle but powerful difference transforms ordinary exchanges into moments of trust. Presence matters more than clever lines. When you are fully present, you give someone the rarest gift, your undivided attention. Put your phone away. Make steady eye contact. Let the other person feel that this moment is important to you. People may forget the words you used, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Think of conversations where you felt truly heard. The memory likely lingers because the person before you wasn't distracted or defensive. They were curious. They nodded, they reflected, they asked follow-up questions that encouraged you to go deeper. That is the rhythm of magnetic conversation. Listen 80% of the time and speak the remaining 20%. When you do speak, make it count. Use the person's name to personalize your words. Slow down so you sound calm and intentional. Choose language that uplifts rather than drains. Avoid gossip or needless complaints. Honesty wrapped in kindness strengthens connection, bluntness without care breaks it. Your body speaks before you do. More than half of human communication is nonverbal, and many of those signals are picked up unconsciously. Open, relaxed posture invites others in. Facing someone directly and keeping your hands visible signals that you are engaged and trustworthy. A gentle lean conveys interest, an occasional nod shows you are tracking the conversation. Practice soft, genuine facial expressions. A warm face and a natural smile lower defenses and make people feel safe. Tone of voice also carries meaning, warmth and steadiness encourage trust, sharpness and haste close doors. Manage your pace, inflection, and volume so your words land with clarity and empathy. Silence can be your ally. Many people rush to fill pauses because silence feels awkward, but a thoughtful pause communicates that you are choosing your words carefully. It gives the other person space and shows maturity. When you breathe before responding, you demonstrate that you are listening rather than reacting. In awkward moments, a calm breath, a small smile, or a curious question can redirect the exchange and neutralize tension. This poise is magnetic. People respect someone who handles resistance with steadiness rather than escalating or withdrawing. Conflict will come. Not everyone will be kind, and some people will test your patience. Being magnetic does not mean avoiding difficult interactions, it means protecting your peace while staying true to your values. Distinguish between reacting and responding. A reaction is automatic and often emotional, a response is considered and grounded. When someone behaves poorly, pause and ask whether engaging will serve your well-being or merely drain you. Often their behavior reflects their own inner struggles rather than your worth. That perspective frees you from taking insults personally and allows you to maintain calm. When necessary, set boundaries firmly and respectfully. Distance yourself from chronic negativity. You do not owe your energy to everyone. Empathy is not a weakness, it is a strength that deepens connection. Try to see what pain or unmet need might be driving someone's behavior. When you respond with curiosity, "That sounds tough, what's been going on?" You disarm hostility and create a pathway for conversation. At times, the most generous act is to walk away. Protecting your emotional space is responsible self-care. Forgiveness is part of this process. Letting go of grudges lightens your load and frees your presence to become more inviting. Forgive for your own peace, not to absolve wrongdoing. Each time you release resentment, you reclaim energy that fuels your magnetic presence. Generosity is central to attraction. Yet giving is rarely about material gifts. The most magnetic people give what matters most: their time, attention, encouragement, and authenticity. Notice small moments to uplift others. A sincere compliment that recognizes effort rather than appearance can shift someone's day. Share helpful information, introduce people who might benefit from one another, celebrate others' wins, and offer a listening ear without expecting repayment. Generous people build bridges rather than walls. They create value without keeping score. However, generosity must be sustainable. Give from a place of fullness. Rest, recharge, and safeguard your emotional hygiene so your giving is genuine rather than draining. Confidence anchors magnetism, but it is not arrogance. Quiet confidence looks like self-possession, not loud self-promotion. It's the calm that comes from knowing your values and honoring them. Start by answering simple questions. What do you stand for? What strengths do you bring? Reflect frequently on things you appreciate about yourself. This is not vanity but grounding. The inner critic will always have a voice. Instead of silencing it, acknowledge it and then choose a different narrative. I appreciate the warning, but I'll act anyway. Confidence grows through action. Do the things that scare you in small increments. Each step forward rewires your brain and strengthens your belief that you can handle uncertainty. Keep promises to yourself. Following through on your own commitments builds trust inward and outward. How you carry yourself matters. Breath and posture influence mood and presence. Stand tall, breathe steadily, and move with intention. Small physical practices like a deliberate breath before entering a conversation help center you. These simple rituals communicate calm assurance to others and remind you of your belonging. Storytelling connects people more deeply than raw facts. Share experiences that reveal your humanity, struggles, lessons learned, and moments of growth. Frame your narrative with a clear purpose so your story serves the relationship rather than filling silence. Make your language visual and emotional so listeners can imagine and feel the moment alongside you. Vulnerability in stories builds trust, humor eases tension and increases likability. Use structure, beginning, conflict, resolution, to guide your listeners on a short journey that leaves a meaningful takeaway. When you tell a true, concise story with warmth, people feel seen and are more likely to remember you. Small gestures and specific praise matter. Generic flattery never lands. Notice the effort people make, the values they exhibit, and the small acts of care they perform. A precise compliment, "I appreciated how patiently you handled that meeting," signals attention and makes people feel recognized. Deliver praise with warmth. A smile or a thoughtful tone amplifies your words. Compliments create ripple effects. When you uplift others consistently, they will be drawn to you not to be admired, but because being with you makes them feel better about themselves. Practice remembering names. Using someone's name in conversation personalizes your interaction and signals that you paid attention. Repeat it naturally during the exchange and at the end, leaving them with a personal touch that sticks. Be genuinely curious about people's passions and values. Ask open-ended questions that invite stories rather than one-word responses. When you facilitate someone's expression rather than redirecting to yourself, you become rare and therefore memorable. Keep your energy positive without ignoring reality. Positivity is a choice that is sustained through gratitude, self-care, and a focus on solutions. Limit exposure to toxic influences and surround yourself with people who recharge you. Celebrate other people's successes and model a resilient, optimistic approach to setbacks. Laughter heals and connects, cultivate lightness but avoid minimizing others' struggles. Be authentic. Authenticity is magnetic because it creates trust. Allow your genuine self to show, including imperfections. Vulnerability invites reciprocity. Practice saying no in ways that honor your boundaries, and don't bend constantly to seek approval. When you are consistent and congruent, when your words match your actions, people learn they can rely on you. Listening remains the central skill. Practice presence, reflect back what you hear, and resist the urge to fix unless requested. The person who listens well becomes a quiet leader, the one people seek for counsel or companionship. If you apply these principles, deep listening, calm presence, generous action, authentic expression, you become the person others want to be around. Share your wisdom, whether on stage, in a meeting, or in a conversation, and if you ever publish this journey through channels like Momentum Audiobooks, your voice will resonate with people seeking practical, heartfelt change. Your posture, gestures, and the rhythm of your voice are part of the conversation long before your words land. Many people underestimate how much of what we communicate bypasses speech and goes straight to the body. To become magnetic, learn to let your nonverbal signals match your intentions. Walk into a room as if you belong there. Place your shoulders back with ease rather than stiffness. Allow your face to relax into an expression that signals openness rather than guardedness. When you adopt a posture that reflects calm confidence, you not only influence how others see you, you also change how you feel inside. Our bodies shape our minds as much as our minds shape our bodies. Eye contact is one of the most immediate ways to create trust. When someone speaks, hold a comfortable gaze long enough to show presence, then look away and return. This natural cycle tells people you are with them without creating pressure. Avoid scanning the room or darting your eyes, it suggests distraction. Steady, compassionate eye contact conveys sincerity. If you practice it, you'll notice how people relax and lean into the conversation. They lower their guard and open up, because they feel truly seen. That feeling of being seen is at the heart of magnetism. How you sound matters as much as what you say. A warm, even tone invites connection. Modulate your volume to suit the moment. A softer voice can draw people closer, while a slightly louder tone conveys enthusiasm when appropriate. Varying your pace keeps listeners engaged. Speed up to add energy, slow down to emphasize significance. Use pauses to let key points settle. The music of your speech is what makes stories memorable and reassurances believable. Practice speaking as if you're sharing something important with a friend rather than delivering a performance. That quality of genuine communication resonates. Gesture thoughtfully. Open palms, measured hand movements, and gestures that match the emotions you express help listeners follow your ideas and trust your sincerity. Avoid abrupt, repetitive, or overly large gestures that distract from your message. Instead, use your hands to underline important points. When you make a promise, let your posture and tone reflect the commitment. The congruence between words and body creates credibility. People trust those whose behavior is consistent across channels. Mastering silence is one of the most underrated tools for influence. In many cultures, silence is feared. We fill pauses with unnecessary words that dilute our meaning. Yet a well-timed silence gives the other person room to think, to reveal more, and to feel unhurried. A thoughtful pause before answering communicates that you are considering their perspective rather than reacting reflexively. When someone is emotional, a moment of silence can validate their feelings in a way that words cannot. Learn to be comfortable in silence, it will transform the quality of your interactions. Vulnerability is magnetic when used with intention. Sharing an honest mistake or a learning moment builds trust because it signals authenticity. People relate to imperfection more than they do to flawless presentations. When you model humility, when you say, "I messed up and here's what I learned," you invite others to drop their masks. But vulnerability is not an invitation to overshare indiscriminately. Choose moments where openness serves the relationship, where your honesty helps others feel safe to mirror it. Vulnerability that is framed, purposeful, and short creates connection without draining you. Boundaries amplify respect. Saying no clearly, calmly, and without apology is not rude, it is an act of self-respect that teaches others how to treat you. When you set limits, you protect your energy and increase the value of your time. People respect those who have standards because boundaries communicate that your attention is not available to any demand. If you decline, do so with warmth and clarity. Offer a brief reason if appropriate, and, when possible, a helpful alternative. Boundaries sustain generosity by ensuring you give from a place of fullness rather than depletion. The rhythm of your day shapes your presence. Small rituals, grounding breaths before entering social settings, a brief reflection each morning on what you value, a pause to notice 3 things you appreciate, anchor your energy. These micro-practices maintain steadiness across interactions. When you are centered, your responses are measured and your presence becomes a safe harbor for others. The magnetism you cultivate is less about occasional showmanship and more about consistent practices that allow your best self to show up repeatedly. Generosity expands when it is strategic. Give without agenda, but give with wisdom. Offer your time, connections, or insights in ways that genuinely uplift others. Introduce 2 people who can help each other. Share a resource that solved a problem for you. Send an encouraging message at a time you sense someone needs it. The most magnetic people find low-cost, high-impact ways to add value. They notice the small opportunities to ease someone else's burden and act promptly. Over time, these investments compound into a reputation of reliability and warmth. The art of receiving compliments is as important as the art of giving them. When someone praises you, accept it gracefully rather than deflecting or minimizing. A simple, thank you, that means a lot, honors both the giver and your own worth. Receiving well models self-respect and encourages others to continue offering appreciation. It also avoids the trap of constant self-deprecation, which can leave listeners unsure how to respond and reduce your perceived credibility. People remember stories that have texture, sensory details, emotional beats, and a clear arc. When you craft a personal story, paint the scene with small details that make it real. Name the sound, the color, the physical sensation. Share what you felt and what you learned. End with a short, clear takeaway that listeners can carry away. Keep your stories concise, length without purpose becomes noise. The best stories invite listeners to see themselves in the tale, prompting empathy and deeper engagement. Ask questions that invite reflection rather than yes or no answers. What was that experience like for you, or how did you navigate that challenge? Open space for people to elaborate and be seen. Follow up with clarifying reflections that show you are listening beneath the surface. When someone reveals an emotion, name it with compassion, it sounds like that left you feeling overwhelmed, and then offer space for them to continue. This practice of reflective curiosity builds the kind of trust that allows conversations to progress beyond superficiality. Gratitude is a simple amplifier of positive energy. Express appreciation not only for outcomes but for processes and effort. Thank someone for the care they took, the persistence they showed, or the kindness they extended. Vocalizing gratitude reinforces the behaviors you admire and deepens relational bonds. Create a habit of daily gratitude. Note one thing that went well, one person who supported you, one lesson you received. This orienting practice shifts your baseline toward abundance and makes your presence more inviting. When you encounter difficult people, lead with curiosity and clear limits. Ask questions that uncover motives while keeping your own center intact. If someone's behavior crosses a line, name it without blame. When you speak to me in that tone, I feel dismissed. I prefer we discuss this calmly. That kind of direct, non-judgmental communication often reduces defensiveness. If the behavior continues, choose distance rather than debate. Your willingness to walk away from repeated toxicity communicates that you value healthy exchanges. Forgiveness is not permission for mistreatment, it is a tool for liberation. Holding on to grudges drains focus and reduces your capacity to show up fully. Forgiving someone can be an internal decision that frees you even if you never reconcile publicly. Forgiveness lets you reclaim emotional space and intensify your presence for people who reciprocate your care. Cultivate a curiosity about people's stories without turning the conversation into an interrogation. Balance listening with sharing so rapport feels reciprocal. Offer small disclosures that reveal your values or experiences in ways that support connection rather than dominate it. Reciprocity builds intimacy. When both parties share progressively, trust deepens. Use humor thoughtfully. Laughter lowers barriers and increases likability, but tailor levity to the situation. Self-deprecating humor can be disarming when short and warm, but avoid patterns that undermine your perceived competence. Shared laughs create bonding moments that linger in people's minds. Timing is more valuable than quantity. A single well-placed, genuine chuckle can transform a tense exchange into a collaborative one. Practice steady optimism without glossing over difficulties. Optimism grounded in realism, acknowledging challenges while focusing on possibilities, attracts people because it offers hope without naivete. Offer encouragement that highlights others' agency. You handled that with thoughtfulness, you have the skills to take the next step. That kind of affirmation empowers others while remaining credible. Remember names and details. The human brain tracks pattern and personal relevance. If you recall a person's hobby, a child's name, or the title of a book they mentioned, use it the next time you meet. That small act is powerful evidence you were paying attention. It says, in essence, you matter enough to remember. People carry these small recognitions as markers of significance. Let your values guide your choices. When your actions align with your principles, whether kindness, generosity, honesty, or curiosity, others perceive you as reliable. Inconsistency breeds suspicion, congruence breeds trust. Make decisions that reflect what you claim to value, even in small everyday choices. Over time, these consistent actions create a reputation for integrity that is magnetic. Build rituals that prepare you for social interactions. A pre-event routine might include a few deep breaths, a quick reminder of 3 things you're curious to learn, and a brief posture check. These micro-habits stabilize your energy and help you enter conversations from a place of intention rather than reactivity. When you arrive centered, you give others the permission to relax in your presence. Use language that centers the other person when appropriate. Phrases like, "Tell me more about that," and "How did that feel?" invite others into deeper sharing. Centering language reduces defensiveness because it signals interest rather than judgment. It also helps you learn more about people's motives, needs, and values, useful insights for building meaningful relationships. Be mindful of emotional contagion. Your mood affects others more than you realize. When you cultivate calm, curiosity, and steady energy, people respond in kind. If you notice someone is anxious or frustrated, offer a grounding presence rather than matching their tension. Model the behavior you wish to see, listen, validate, and then gently guide the conversation toward solutions or perspective shifts when appropriate. When you give feedback, frame it with empathy and specificity. Begin with what's working, then describe the behavior you observed, and finally offer a concrete suggestion. Avoid broad critiques or character judgments. People are more receptive to feedback that preserves dignity and offers a clear path forward. Delivering feedback with respect strengthens trust rather than eroding it. Make introductions with care. When you connect 2 people, share a brief note about what they have in common or why you think they'd benefit from meeting. A thoughtful introduction smooths the path for meaningful connections and positions you as a reliable connector. Over time, your role as a bridge builder increases your influence naturally because people appreciate introductions that respect their goals and values. Protect your time deliberately. Time is the currency of influence. Prioritize interactions that align with your values and purpose. Decline politely when engagements would sap your energy for little return. This clarity honors your limits and increases the impact of your presence when you do choose to engage. Celebrate others authentically. When someone succeeds, offer specific praise that recognizes the work behind the result. Genuine celebration builds loyalty and invites others to celebrate you in return. It creates a community of mutual uplift rather than transactional exchange. Remember that becoming magnetic is a practice, not a persona. It's not a mask you wear temporarily, it's a set of habits that shape how you move through life. Each small choice, listening more, smiling genuinely, keeping your posture open, setting a boundary, offering a thoughtful compliment, accumulates into a presence that draws others. You become someone people seek out because you leave them feeling seen, supported, and a little more hopeful. Share your journey in places where your voice can help others practice these skills. If you publish insights or lessons on platforms like Momentum Audiobooks, focus on simple, repeatable actions people can try today. Offer short exercises, reflection prompts, and examples from everyday life. Practical, relatable guidance builds engagement and encourages sustained practice, which is the real engine of change. People notice the small, consistent choices you make long before they notice grand gestures. The little moments add up: how you enter a room, the way you listen to a single person, the attention you give to someone who feels overlooked. These seemingly minor acts accumulate into an unmistakable pattern. Over time, that pattern becomes your reputation, the quiet narrative people tell about you when you are not in the room. If you want to be magnetic, begin by mastering habit-level behaviors that create comfort, safety, and warmth for others. Start with attention. Give it fully, generously, and without expectation. Becoming someone who genuinely cares requires curiosity and restraint. Curiosity opens conversation, restraint keeps the spotlight off you. When you meet someone new, focus on extracting small, meaningful details rather than rehearsing endless anecdotes about yourself. Ask a thoughtful question and then wait for the answer. Let silence do some of the work. People often fill gaps with richer information than they would if they were constantly interrupted. That silence, when held with patience, feels like an invitation to deeper sharing. Over time, your habit of patient attention will make you the person people remember for making them feel important. Compliments have high value when they are precise and timely. Generic praise is easy to dismiss, but a compliment that recognizes effort, nuance, or character resonates because it proves you were paying attention. Notice the tiny improvements, the persistence in someone's work, the kindness in how they treat others, or the way they handled a difficult moment. Speak to the specific behavior and the impact it created. When you do, you give people a clear mirror that reflects their best moments, and that mirror feels rare and precious. Deliver such feedback with a warm tone and an open posture so it lands as genuine rather than transactional. The rule of reciprocity shapes social connection. When you give without expecting immediate return, people feel a natural pull to reciprocate. This is not a manipulation tactic, it's the organic chemistry of relationships. Generous acts create a sense of indebtedness that usually results in mutual support, shared favors, and stronger bonds. But generosity loses its power when it's performed from a place of scarcity or obligation. Give because it feels right, because the act itself aligns with your values, and because you enjoy the process of making someone's day easier. When you give from abundance, your actions feel sincere and are more likely to inspire lasting goodwill. Listening deeply is an art that requires you to notice more than words. Listen for tone, tempo, and the spaces between sentences. Pay attention to what isn't said. A person may recount an event yet leave out how it affected them emotionally. Your job as a skilled listener is to gently invite that layer into the conversation. Use simple prompts that encourage exploration. What was that like for you? Or, how did that feel in the moment? These gentle nudges allow others to reveal the heart of their story without feeling pressured. When you consistently practice this, people begin to recognize you as someone who creates emotional safety, and they return to you when they need to be heard. Stories create connection because they build empathy. When you tell a story, keep the focus on the human learning rather than on self-aggrandizement. Share the moment of discomfort, the mistake made, and the lesson learned. These human beats create relatability and allow listeners to see themselves in your experience. Use sensory details sparingly to make scenes come alive: a squeaky chair, a sudden rain, the rush of adrenaline before a decision. These textures anchor your narrative in reality and make it more memorable. Maintain a clear arc, set the scene, introduce the conflict, and offer a succinct, honest resolution. When your story ends with a tangible insight, listeners leave with something they can apply to their own lives. Authenticity grows from a simple alignment between internal values and outward behavior. Practice small acts of congruence. If you say you value honesty, be direct in your communication. If you say you cherish kindness, show it in small daily gestures. People sense when your words and actions diverge, and inconsistency erodes trust. When you practice authenticity relentlessly, you attract people who appreciate you as you are, which leads to deeper, more sustainable relationships. There is relief in this approach. You no longer need to keep up a performance. Authentic living saves energy and builds trust. Sometimes authenticity demands courage. You may need to say no to requests that conflict with your priorities or to express a differing opinion with respect. Saying no effectively requires clarity and warmth. Be brief and honest about your reason, and when appropriate, offer an alternative that signals care rather than avoidance. For example, I can't commit to that right now because of my schedule. I can help by suggesting someone who might be a good fit. That kind of response preserves both your boundaries and the relationship. Over time, people respect those who honor their limits because it signals stability and predictability. Managing difficult interactions is less about changing others and more about preserving your center. Start by pausing when triggered. A deliberate breath, a momentary silence, or a change of posture signals to your nervous system that you are choosing response over reaction. Use grounding language that names your observation without assigning intent. I notice this conversation is getting tense. I want to understand what's behind that. This approach diffuses defensiveness because it frames the issue as shared rather than confrontational. If the other person refuses to engage constructively, withdraw politely. You owe your energy to relationships that reciprocate respect. Forgiveness accelerates your capacity to be present. Holding on to past slights occupies emotional bandwidth that could be used for new connections. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation or condoning harmful actions. It is a personal decision to release the weight of resentment so you can reallocate your attention to people and activities that build your life. Practice small acts of release daily. Imagine setting the grievance down like a heavy bag, or write a one-paragraph letter you never send, expressing what you needed but didn't receive. These internal rituals loosen the grip of bitterness and free you to be more open in the present. Energy hygiene matters. Who you spend time with affects your baseline mood more than you might think. Invest in relationships that replenish you. Limit exposure to chronic complainers or energy vampires who leave you drained. This is not elitism, it is stewardship. Just as you would choose nourishing food for your body, choose nourishing company for your mind. The people who reflect your values and lift your energy deserve your attention because they help you sustain a positive baseline, which in turn, makes you more magnetic. Practice small confidence rituals that prime you for connection. A quick posture check, a 3-breath grounding, or a short internal affirmation, I belong here, shifts your nervous system into a more open state. Confidence is not a permanent state, it is a series of tiny acts that signal safety to your body. Repeat them before meetings, social events, or any situation where you want to show up calm and present. Over time, these rituals become automatic and your baseline presence improves. Humor creates space for human connection when used with sensitivity. A well-placed, light-hearted comment can cut tension and create rapport. Match your humor to the situation and to the people you are with. Avoid sarcasm that undermines, prefer warmth that invites inclusive laughter. When you can make others laugh while maintaining respect, you create a memorable emotional experience. That positive memory becomes part of the reason people seek your company. Practice giving useful compliments regularly and accept them graciously. When someone praises you, receive it simply, thank you, that means a lot. Avoid self-deprecation in response, it can diminish the giver's gesture and reduce your perceived confidence. Accepting praise models self-respect and encourages a culture where appreciation can be freely exchanged. Reflection accelerates growth. At the end of each week, take a few minutes to consider one interaction that felt especially good and one that felt challenging. What choices led to each result? How might you adjust your approach next time? This practice sharpens your awareness and turns everyday conversations into laboratories for growth. Small course corrections compound rapidly when applied consistently. Create a small set of conversational openings that invite depth without sounding scripted. For example, ask about someone's recent highlight, a lesson they learned, or what they are most curious about right now. These prompts steer conversation toward meaningful territory and make it easy for people to share more than surface-level facts. Over time, people will come to associate you with substantive exchanges rather than shallow banter. When you introduce people, offer a concise context that makes the connection useful. Share a sentence about each person's interest or need and explain why you think the introduction might be meaningful. Thoughtful introductions smooth social frictions and demonstrate that you are a resource rather than a competitor. This role of connector enhances your social value naturally over time without manipulation. Be mindful of timing when you offer advice. People rarely need solutions when they are still processing emotion. Listen first, validate their feeling, and then ask if they want suggestions. Respect the choice to simply be heard. When advice is solicited, offer it succinctly and with humility. Frame it as a perspective rather than a directive. One option you might consider is, this reduces defensiveness and invites exploration. Cultivate a practice of small kindnesses that require little effort but have outsized impact, a handwritten note, a quick check-in text, or remembering to celebrate someone's small win. These micro-acts build relational goodwill and make you memorable for the right reasons. Over time, these habits turn you into someone people trust to be consistently caring. If you share your journey publicly, on video, in writing, or through platforms like Momentum Audiobooks, focus on actionable, repeatable practices. People engage when they can try something immediately and see results. Offer short challenges or exercises that prompt daily practice, such as a 7-day listening challenge or a 3-step ritual for arriving calm. Encourage reflection and small experiments rather than lofty promises. Practical guidance builds trust and keeps viewers coming back because they see tangible improvement in their daily lives. Small behaviors become the architecture of attraction. The way you follow up after a conversation, the timbre of your voice when someone shares bad news, the small courtesy of making eye contact across a crowded room, these are the details that carve out your presence in other people's minds. If you want people to seek you out, begin by refining these micro-moments. They are not flashy, but they are reliable. They compound into a reputation for warmth, steadiness, and reliability. That reputation is the magnet people feel long before they can name why they want to be near you. Practice the art of thoughtful follow-up. After a meeting or an interaction that mattered, send a short note acknowledging what you heard or offering a small piece of value related to the conversation. A quick message that says, "I appreciated your perspective on X, here's a link that might be helpful," or, "It was great hearing about your project, if you'd like, I can introduce you to someone who might help," proves that you were listening and that you intend to follow through. These small gestures signal reliability. They tell people that your words are not empty and that when you commit, you show up. Over time, consistent follow-up makes you a trusted resource. Choose your energy in every interaction. You can show up with fatigue, annoyance, and low curiosity, or you can show up with warmth, mild enthusiasm, and genuine interest. Others will respond to whatever you bring. Making the choice to bring a slight extra charge of positivity doesn't require false cheerfulness, it simply means deciding to make the conversation safer and brighter for the other person. That decision is a small, repeatable habit that makes you easier to be around. People prefer company that leaves them feeling energized rather than depleted. Shift from information giving to meaning making. Too many conversations are a string of facts without emotional context. The magnetic communicator translates events into meaning for other people. When you recount an experience, share what it taught you or why it mattered. This helps listeners connect the dots and find relevance to their own lives. People tune into narratives that illuminate a truth or offer a fresh angle. When your remarks add interpretive value, you become not just entertaining but helpful. Protect your curiosity. Curiosity is the social lubricant that keeps conversations flowing. It allows you to ask follow-up questions that reveal deeper layers of a person's story. Practice curiosity as a discipline. Wonder about motives rather than judge them, ask about meaning rather than interrupting with correction, and invite people to tell the parts of their story that matter to them. Curiosity is a generous posture because it signals that you are interested in someone else's inner life. It is also highly attractive because few people consistently offer that level of interest. Take care with online interactions. The habits that make you magnetic in person translate to digital spaces, but they require extra care because tone and nuance are easy to lose in text. In messages and posts, prefer clarity over cleverness. When you reply to someone's idea, acknowledge what you appreciated before contributing your thought. In group settings, highlight others' contributions publicly. When you disagree, do so with a calm tone and concrete points rather than sarcasm or dismissal. Social media can magnify your influence when you treat others with consistent civility and curiosity. Develop the muscle of concise vulnerability. Long-winded confessions or relentless negativity repel. Choose brief, honest disclosures that illuminate who you are and invite reciprocity. A short line like, "I've been nervous about this, but I'm trying," communicates humanity without burdening the listener. That kind of calibrated vulnerability deepens trust because it removes pretense while remaining manageable for the listener to hold. It's a pattern that signals courage in small, digestible doses. Emphasize emotions over judgments. When someone talks about a difficult situation, resist the urge to label the person's behavior as good or bad. Instead, reflect the feeling you hear, "You sound exhausted by this," and then ask if they want ideas or simply a sounding board. Emotional labeling validates the inner state and lowers the need for defensive explanation. It also opens space for practical problem solving if and when the person is ready. People respond to empathy first, solutions can follow. Practice the etiquette of presence. Put away distractions and give people your full attention. Avoid checking your phone during an intense or important exchange. If you must be interrupted by something urgent, apologize briefly and explain the interruption. That clarity preserves trust. Small courtesies, arriving on time, honoring the agreed length of a meeting, and refraining from domineering behavior, amass into a reputation of respectfulness. People remember who made their time feel valued. Curate the stories you share publicly. When you tell a tale about a difficult moment or a personal failing, frame it with a clear lesson or a positive shift that followed. Stories that end with growth are not only more palatable, they are more helpful. People are drawn to narratives that promise insight and model possibility. Your account of struggle becomes magnetic when it signals resilience and a path forward rather than lingering in complaint. Use reassuring phrases that diffuse tension. Simple lines like, "I want to understand," or "Tell me what you need," lower defenses because they transfer agency to the other person. These phrases are not manipulative, they are tools to create a safer conversational climate. When someone feels safer, they share more honestly, and honest sharing builds trust. Keep a set of grounding phrases handy for moments of conflict or high emotion. Be intentional with compliments that reinforce values you admire. If you prioritize reliability, notice and name acts of consistency in others. If creativity matters to you, praise the imaginative approaches people take. Compliments that align with your values create shared territory. They tell others what you stand for and invite them to recognize those same qualities in themselves. Guard against conversational narcissism. It's easy to hijack a conversation with your own stories, but true connection requires restraint. Make it a habit to check whether you've spoken more than your counterpart and to intentionally give more space if so. When you resist the reflex to dominate, you build scarcity value for your perspective. People will seek your input because it feels earned rather than assumed. Practice the ritual of checking in. A brief, periodic check-in, "How are you handling things?" shows sustained interest in someone's life beyond a single conversation. These ongoing touchpoints create relational continuity. They signal that you care over time, not just in moments when you need something. People remember who shows up repeatedly in small, supportive ways. Learn to close conversations well. Many exchanges end abruptly or awkwardly. A deliberate closing line, "It was great talking with you, I'd love to continue this next time," wraps the interaction with warmth and keeps the connection open. Closing well signals you value the other person's time and sets the stage for future contact. Good endings make beginnings easier. Model calm in crisis. When situations escalate, people look for an anchor. Maintain a measured voice, use simple language, and focus on next steps. Avoid sprawling analysis or assigning blame. Even small gestures, a steady tone, a willingness to listen, a clear plan for immediate action, help others regain composure. Being the person who remains useful under pressure enhances your reliability and your attractiveness as a confidant. Cultivate a habit of observant generosity. Notice when someone is juggling too much and offer a concrete, low-effort help, bring coffee, offer a connection, or suggest a workable resource. These small, tangible acts of support often mean more than grand declarations of care. They demonstrate that you are not only emotionally present but practically dependable. Invite feedback and model humility. Ask trusted people how you come across in conversations and what might feel different if you adjusted your approach. Receive their answers without defensiveness. The willingness to learn publicly signals growth orientation and invites others to invest in your development. People respect those who admit they are a work in progress and actively seek to improve. Create experiences that include others. Host small gatherings where people can meet and feel safe. Curate the dynamic so conversations flow naturally, introduce thoughtful prompts, mix personalities intentionally, and offer activities that create shared context. People remember the hosts who make them feel welcome and included. These experiences strengthen your social influence because you become the person who creates meaningful contexts for connection. Remember that reputation is built over time. One charming interaction can create goodwill, but consistent behavior across days, weeks, and months cements how people see you. Decide what you want to be known for: kindness, reliability, curiosity, and steward that image through steady practice. Your public consistency becomes a form of social currency that opens doors naturally. When you teach others what you practice, you scale your influence while reinforcing your own habits. Offering short workshops, leading a conversation group, or sharing bite-sized exercises on platforms like Momentum Audiobooks helps others adopt these skills and positions you as a practitioner rather than a mere theorist. Teaching clarifies your thinking and cements credibility. End each day with a small reflection. Note one interaction that felt aligned with your values and one where you might choose differently next time. These micro-retrospectives sharpen your awareness and allow you to course-correct rapidly. Over time, this reflective habit rewires your conversational instincts toward greater elegance and impact. Consistency beats intensity. The people who are truly magnetic are not those who perform occasional grand displays of charm but those who habitually exhibit small, reliable acts that build trust day after day. Think of magnetism as a muscle that strengthens with routine. It responds to regular practice, showing up on time, keeping promises, checking in without being asked, and delivering help that is timely and relevant. These repetitive choices form an invisible ledger in other people's minds. Over months and years, that ledger adds up to credibility. If you want to be memorable for the right reasons, commit to the slow work of consistent presence. Make a simple plan you can stick to. Identify 3 daily practices that support your presence and relationships and keep them modest enough that you will actually do them. A short morning routine that centers you, one intentional act of generosity each day, and a brief evening reflection to note what went well will serve far better than a grand but unsustainable program. The point is to create habits that are resilient against busy days and stress. When life gets noisy, small rituals act as anchors. They remind you of the person you want to be and keep your energy aligned with that intention. Network intentionally. Networking is not collecting contacts or broadcasting your achievements. It is cultivating mutual value over time. Approach connections with the mindset of a bridge builder. When you meet someone, think about how you might help them in the future rather than what they can do for you now. Offer introductions, resources, or ideas that are genuinely useful. Follow up with a brief message that references something specific from your conversation. Over time, those small, thoughtful touches turn casual acquaintances into reliable allies. Be the person who remembers details and makes useful connections. That reputation opens doors naturally. Influence is built on credibility and empathy. People are persuaded not by pressure but by trust and alignment. If you want to sway opinions or lead change, start by listening to what matters to the people you seek to influence. Reflect their concerns, validate their emotions, and then present your perspective in a way that connects to their priorities. Use stories and examples that make your position relatable. Avoid using forceful rhetoric that triggers defensiveness. Instead, offer options and invite collaboration. When people feel heard and respected, they are far more likely to explore different viewpoints. Lead with clarity, not volume. In leadership, charisma is less about performance and more about consistency, vision, and emotional steadiness. Clearly communicate the purpose and the next steps. Model the behaviors you want others to adopt. Admit mistakes and make corrections publicly when necessary. Leaders who are magnetic create psychological safety. People feel free to take risks, offer ideas, and bring their full selves. That kind of environment amplifies collective intelligence and increases loyalty. If you aim to influence a team or a community, cultivate clarity of purpose and an atmosphere where people know they will be treated with fairness and respect. Protect your boundaries to preserve your impact. Generosity and accessibility should not mean being always available. The most effective contributors protect focus time for deep work and recovery. When you guard your attention, you preserve the quality of what you offer. Communicate your limits with grace. Say no when commitments would dilute your ability to follow through. People respect those who honor their own capacities because it signals reliability and predictability. Boundaries are not a barrier to connection, they are a condition for sustainable generosity. Invest in your emotional literacy. The ability to accurately identify and articulate your feelings gives you leverage over impulsive reactions and enhances your capacity to connect with others. Name the emotion you feel in a moment and consider what need lies beneath it. When someone triggers you, a quick internal practice: notice the sensation, label it, breathe, and choose a response. Create space for a constructive reaction. Emotional literacy reduces avoidable conflict and increases your capacity to be present for others without losing yourself. Maintain curiosity about people's inner worlds. Curiosity keeps conversations alive and avoids replaying the same small talk. Ask about motivations, lessons, and the unexpected moments that shaped someone's perspective. When you show interest in the quieter parts of a person's life, their creative pursuits, their subtle struggles, the stories they seldom tell, you create a deeper bond. Curiosity is a gift because it honors other people's complexity and signals that you believe their life matters. Use public platforms with integrity. If you produce content, videos, posts, or articles, aim to be useful rather than merely entertaining. Share practical steps, honest reflections, and examples that show both challenges and progress. People quickly detect when content is contrived for likes, they also respond deeply to authenticity and actionable insight. If you share your learning process and small experiments, others will follow along because the path feels accessible. Platforms like Momentum Audiobooks are places where your voice can reach people seeking practical transformation. Use that reach responsibly by offering real value and inviting practice rather than passive consumption. Design social situations that foster connection. When you host a gathering, plan for interaction rather than passive observation. Create small prompts that encourage sharing, arrange seating to facilitate conversation, and introduce people with context that makes engagement easier. A well-crafted setting reduces awkwardness and encourages meaningful exchange. People remember hosts who make them feel included and who reduce the friction of beginning a conversation. Balance giving and receiving. Many people get trapped in single-direction generosity, which leads to fatigue and resentment. Allow yourself to receive praise, help, and support. Accepting lifts the people who give, reinforcing reciprocal cycles. When you allow others to contribute to you, you create opportunities for deeper mutuality and shared investment. Receiving graciously is itself a relational skill that signals worthiness and invites further connection. Practice small acts of consistency that communicate dependability. Show up when you say you will, deliver on promises, and follow through on introductions you commit to making. Reliable behavior is a strong predictor of long-term attraction in social and professional contexts. When people know they can count on you, they include you in plans, defend your reputation, and invest in the relationship. Refine your narrative for impact. Your personal story does not need to be dramatic to be compelling. Focus on clarity and meaning. Communicate the values that guide your decisions and the turning points that shaped your approach. Practice telling the succinct version of your story so you can share it without over-explaining. When your narrative is clear, people understand your direction and are more likely to align with you. Learn to steward group energy. In any gathering, various personalities will vie for attention, and conversations can fragment. As a magnetic presence, look for ways to amplify quieter voices and gently redirect dominant talkers to create space. Ask an introverted person's opinion directly but invitingly, and thank a dominant speaker for their insight while offering a prompt that includes others. Managing the flow of conversation creates an inclusive dynamic that people notice and appreciate. Guard against performative empathy. True empathy involves understanding and aligning with another person's emotional state, not merely saying the words they expect to hear. When you respond, reflect the emotion you perceive and then inquire about what the person needs. If you are unsure, ask, "Would you like advice or would you prefer I just listen?" This simple question respects autonomy and prevents well-intentioned but unwanted interventions. Sustain your physical well-being as a foundation for presence. Sleep, movement, and nutrition affect your energy and patience. Small investments, a consistent sleep routine, a short daily walk, mindful breathing practices, support steadier moods and clearer thinking. When your body is regulated, your emotional range widens and your capacity to connect deepens. Presence is easier when you are not operating from depletion. Be curious about culture. Different social groups have varied norms for communication, eye contact, humor, and disclosure. When you enter a new environment, take time to observe and adapt rather than assuming your default style will land. Cultural sensitivity increases the chance that your warmth will be interpreted as welcome rather than intrusive. Adaptive presence shows respect and reduces unintended friction. Celebrate progress publicly and privately. Acknowledge others' wins in group settings and offer private notes of encouragement when appropriate. Public recognition multiplies goodwill and helps create a culture of appreciation. When you name people's contributions openly, you increase their social capital and reinforce the behaviors you want to see more of. Cultivate a few signature phrases that create warmth and clarity. Simple lines like, "Tell me more about that," or, "I'm glad you shared," function as relational glue because they lower barriers and invite further sharing. Use these phrases deliberately, not as scripts, but as reliable signals that you are present and interested. Practice graceful exits. Not every interaction will convert into a long-term relationship. Learn to leave conversations with warmth, thank the person for their time, summarize a highlight and express openness to continue later. A tidy ending preserves goodwill and keeps the door open for future connection. Finally, be patient with yourself. Becoming magnetic is a long-term practice that involves both outer skill building and inner transformation. You will make missteps. You will speak when you should have listened or try to solve when the gift was simply bearing witness. Use those moments as data rather than definitive failures. Reflect, adjust, and return to practice. Over time, the cumulative effect of small, intentional changes will produce a presence that draws people naturally, sustainably, and generously. People are drawn to those who practice humility alongside competence. Being skilled is attractive, but being willing to admit limits and ask for help deepens connection in ways that solo competence cannot. When you combine expertise with an open posture, when you say, "I don't have the answer, but I'm curious to learn," you invite collaboration. That stance converts influence into shared ownership. People want to be part of processes that respect their contributions, and leaders who model curiosity and fallibility create teams that are both loyal and creative. Trust is cumulative and fragile. It grows when actions and words align, and it erodes when promises are broken or explanations feel evasive. To build durable trust, focus on predictable routines, show up when you say you will, complete small tasks reliably, and return messages within a timeframe you can keep. If you miss a commitment, own it quickly and outline how you'll make it right. Transparency under pressure strengthens credibility more than perfection ever could. People notice when someone takes responsibility gracefully. That response becomes part of your relational credit score. Communication that influences begins with listening for values, not just facts. People rarely act purely on information, they act on meaning that connects new ideas to deeply held beliefs. When you want to persuade, map your message to the values your audience already prioritizes. Use narratives that show rather than tell how a choice aligns with what they care about. That makes your position feel less like persuasion and more like shared sense-making. Influence grounded in respect and relevance creates voluntary commitment rather than compliance. Create emotional anchors in conversations. These are brief, resonant moments, an image, a metaphor, a short story, that help people remember your point because it's bound to feeling, not just logic. When you wrap an idea in a human example, it becomes easier to recall and more likely to be acted on. Thoughtful metaphors and concrete sensory details make abstract points tangible. People prefer to follow ideas they can picture and emotionally relate to. Practice calibration in feedback and recognition. Praise that is too effusive can feel manipulative, while critique that is too blunt can feel punitive. Aim for precise, balanced comments that clarify impact and offer a next step. When you give feedback, connect it to purpose, show how an adjustment will help the person better serve their goals or the group's mission. When you recognize someone publicly, tie the recognition to observable behaviors so it feels earned and instructive rather than performative. That combination of clarity and warmth encourages growth without defensiveness. Make space for quiet contributors. In group settings, the loudest voices often dominate, but influence tends to be deeper when you draw out the perspectives of quieter participants. A simple, direct invitation, "I'd love to hear what you think about this," signals that you value diverse input. Creating opportunities for varied participation not only uncovers stronger ideas but also expands your circle of trust. People remember hosts and leaders who made them feel included and safe to speak. Create moments of mutual vulnerability in relationships you value. Shared vulnerability, mutual admissions of fear, uncertainty, or failure, builds intimacy more quickly than polished competence. Invite it carefully and reciprocate when appropriate. For example, if a colleague shares a worry about a project, you might respond with a brief honest admission of a similar concern and the small step you plan to take. Mutual vulnerability is not oversharing, it is a calibrated exchange that signals humanity and invites partnership. Curate your social circle with intention. Your nearest relationships shape your mood, thinking patterns, and opportunities far more than casual acquaintances. Surround yourself with people who model the values you seek to reinforce: curiosity, generosity, integrity, and warmth. That doesn't mean avoiding disagreement. Productive friction with trusted people helps you grow. It does mean limiting time with those who chronically drain or diminish you. Your circle becomes a mirror and a resource, choose it with care. Practice the discipline of micro-commitments. When building habits that reinforce your magnetic presence, start with tiny, specific actions that require low willpower but produce consistent signals: 1 meaningful check-in message a week, 3 deep breaths before each conversation, a single focused question at the start of networking conversations. These micro-commitments are the scaffolding for larger changes because they are sustainable. Small wins create momentum, and momentum compounds into identity. Be deliberate about the stories you tell yourself. Your internal narrative shapes your posture, tone, and decisions. Replace self-limiting scripts with functional ones. If your inner voice says, "I'll mess this up," reframe it to, "I'll learn whatever happens next." These reframes do not deny reality, they orient you toward agency. Narrative work isn't about toxic positivity, it's about practicing interpretations that help you act rather than freeze. Over time, the story you rehearse will alter the way you behave in social situations and how others experience you. Develop rituals that mark transitions. Small ceremonies, closing your laptop with a decisive motion at the end of the workday, doing a short breathing sequence before a social event, or writing a one-line intention before a meeting, signal your brain that you are moving from one mode to another. These rituals reduce cognitive residue and help you show up more fully in each context. They also communicate to others that you respect your roles and the time you spend with them. When giving advice, situate your counsel in options rather than prescriptions. People prefer autonomy and are more likely to act when they perceive choice. Offer 2 or 3 paths and briefly note pros and cons rather than insisting on a single right move. That approach respects the other person's agency while leveraging your perspective. It also reduces defensiveness and increases the likelihood that your insight will be considered and applied. Learn the power of the small correction. When someone misperceives you or says something off base, a brief clarifying statement can prevent a misunderstanding from calcifying. Do this with calmness and brevity, correct the record with a simple fact or a short perspective, then move on. Prolonged defense or over-explanation often escalates attention to the error rather than resolving it. The small correction preserves dignity on both sides and helps conversations proceed productively. Practice gratitude in ways that are specificity-rich. Instead of a generic, "thank you," describe what the person did and why it mattered. "Thank you for staying late to help finish the report. Your attention to detail stopped several costly errors," carries far more weight than a bland expression of thanks. Specific gratitude becomes a learning signal. It tells people exactly which behaviors you value and encourages their repetition. Pay attention to the cadence of your social energy. Some days you will naturally bring high enthusiasm, other days you will be quieter and more reflective. On high-energy days, channel that vitality into activities that benefit from it. On low-energy days, seek conversations where listening is the primary currency. Honoring your natural rhythm prevents inauthentic performances and helps you conserve the energy you need to show up when it counts. Use small experiments to test social hypotheses. If you're not sure how a new habit will land, try it in low-stakes settings. Test a new opening line at a casual event, try a shorter story with a trusted friend, or pilot a feedback structure in a small team. Observe the outcomes, adjust, and repeat. Iteration reduces anxiety about change and helps you find approaches that feel authentic and effective for your personality. Value the long game in relationships. Short-term visibility can bring attention, but long-term presence creates influence. Invest in people when there is no immediate return. Follow up, celebrate small milestones, and show interest over months and years. People remember the ones who were there through ordinary seasons and not only in moments of spectacle. Longevity in care builds depth and trust that outlasts viral moments. Practice verbal economy. In many interactions, saying less and with greater precision increases perceived intelligence and calm. Edit your contributions mentally before speaking. What is the point I want to make, and can I make it in a single clear sentence? Trimming excess words fosters clarity and respects listeners' time. When you're concise and relevant, people gravitate toward you because your presence saves cognitive energy. Finally, be patient with relational growth. Deep bonds are formed through repetition, mutual vulnerability, and consistent reliability. Resist the urge for instant results. Instead, practice the small things that compound: follow through, listen, be curious, offer help, set boundaries, and celebrate others. Over months and years, these practices transform the texture of your relationships. You become not an intermittent spark but a steady presence people seek for counsel, company, and collaboration. People remember how you make them feel long after they forget what you said. That emotional residue is the currency of meaningful relationships, and you can intentionally shape it through small, consistent choices. Lead interactions with warmth and attention rather than with an agenda. When you prioritize the person over the point you want to make, you create moments that linger positively in people's minds. These residues accumulate: a calm reaction in a tense moment, a thoughtful note after a meeting, a timely compliment about effort rather than outcome. Each of these acts deposits goodwill into the relational bank account you share with others. Pay attention to the tempo of conversations. Fast, clipped exchanges feel transactional, while unhurried dialogue signals care. Slowing down your speech and giving people time to answer creates a sense of spaciousness that encourages more honest sharing. When you allow silences to exist, you invite depth. Many people rush to fill quiet, which often leads to surface-level chatter. Practice the discipline of breathing and patiently letting the other person find their words. That small restraint communicates respect and gives your interactions a quality of contemplative presence that stands out. Use physical cues thoughtfully to reinforce connection. A gentle nod, a soft gaze, or a brief touch on the forearm when appropriate can amplify your words and show that you are emotionally present. These gestures should be attuned to cultural and personal boundaries. When used respectfully, they convey empathy and human warmth that words alone sometimes cannot. Be attentive to how the other person responds, mirror their level of comfort and scale your physical cues accordingly. The congruence between what you say and how you physically show up builds trust quickly. When conversations turn to advice-seeking, lead with curiosity and frame suggestions as possibilities rather than prescriptions. People are more receptive when they feel autonomy is preserved. Offer options like, "One thing that helped me was," or, "You could consider X or Y depending on your priorities." This approach shows humility and respects the other person's capacity to choose. It also increases the likelihood that your input will be considered and applied because you've avoided the tone of directive authority. Practice the art of strategic confession. A short admission of uncertainty or a quick anecdote about a mistake can humanize you and lower social defenses. Keep these confessions concise and purposeful, chosen to create trust rather than to seek reassurance. For example, saying, "I wasn't sure how to approach this at first, but I learned that," signals growth and invites others to share their learning. When mutual learning becomes the norm in your interactions, relationships feel collaborative rather than transactional. Create patterns of recognizable warmth. People find comfort in predictability that signals care: a weekly check-in message, a short celebratory note when someone reaches a milestone, or a consistent style of follow-up after meetings. These patterns do not require grand gestures, they require regularity. When people come to expect small affirming rituals from you, they experience a sense of safety that deepens trust. This predictable kindness is especially powerful in professional settings where relational consistency is rare. Observe and name strengths you genuinely admire. Naming specific strengths clarifies that you notice and value particular behaviors, which encourages their repetition. Instead of vague praise, articulate the observable trait and its impact. Your summaries in meetings help the team align quickly. That clarity saves us time. Specific recognition is both affirming and instructive. It doubles as coaching that raises the bar for collaboration without sounding like criticism. Be mindful of how you manage apologies. A concise, sincere apology that acknowledges the harm, takes responsibility, and outlines a corrective step restores trust more effectively than a flurry of explanations. Avoid defensive qualifiers that dilute the apology. When you err, say it plainly, describe how you'll change, and follow through. People respect leaders and friends who can repair relational ruptures with integrity and speed. The ability to repair well is a hallmark of durable magnetism. Use the principle of small equalizers to bridge status gaps. When you interact with people in different roles or hierarchies, offer microgestures that normalize connection, ask about their perspective, reference a detail they shared previously, or run a quick check that invites their input. These moves flatten unnecessary barriers and make collaboration more fluid. When individuals feel heard regardless of rank, engagement improves and outcomes benefit from a wider pool of candid input. Cultivate a posture of selective openness. Share personal stories that are relevant to the conversation and that model vulnerability at an appropriate depth. Oversharing breeds fatigue, too little sharing creates distance. The right balance invites reciprocity while keeping exchanges manageable. Use your own disclosures strategically to prompt others into reflection or to model a behavior you hope to see. When your vulnerability is purposeful, it acts as social glue rather than a burden. Remember that presence is a choice you make often throughout the day. You can choose to browse notifications while someone is speaking, or you can close your screen and offer undivided attention. You can choose to comment from instinct, or you can choose to listen and reflect first. These repeated choices are the building blocks of a magnetic presence. The decision to be fully present is rarely dramatic, it is made in the micro-moments that collectively shape how people experience you. Design conversational scaffolding that steers exchanges toward meaningful outcomes. Start with a brief orienting sentence that frames why the conversation matters, then move into open questions, and close with a clear next step or takeaway. This structure reduces drift and increases impact while preserving room for organic sharing. Helping conversations move with purpose respects everyone's time and leaves participants with a sense of momentum rather than unresolved ambiguity. Protect your capacity to be generous by practicing practical self-care. Regular sleep, brief movement breaks, and simple breathing exercises preserve emotional availability. When you are well rested and grounded, your ability to listen deeply, to offer thoughtful feedback, and to sustain positive energy increases markedly. Taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's an enabling act that allows you to show up for others consistently and with authenticity. Train your noticing lens. Make it a habit to scan for small details that most people overlook, a new haircut, a change in someone's mood, or a tiny project milestone. Noticing these subtleties signals attentiveness and care. When you call out a small, specific change, "I noticed you've been quieter lately, are you okay?" You communicate that the person matters beyond their functional role. Small observations often open doors to deeper dialogues. Use rituals to close loops. After a decision is made or a project wraps, send a brief recap that articulates outcomes, next steps, and appreciation for contributions. These closing rituals reduce ambiguity and provide a chance to publicly recognize effort. They also build your reputation as someone who moves things forward with clarity and gratitude, which draws collaborators who value reliability. Practice patience with relational timelines. Deep trust does not emerge overnight. It unfolds through repeated, consistent behavior and the accrual of small proofs that your character is steady. Resist short-term metrics of popularity or instant rapport. Instead, measure growth by the depth of conversations, the frequency of honest feedback, and the presence of long-term collaborators who turn to you in critical moments. These are the durable indicators of magnetic influence. Lean into the power of reciprocity in mentoring relationships. Offer time, insight, and introductions generously to those you mentor, and be willing to receive perspective and energy from them as well. These reciprocal mentoring loops broaden your network while deepening your sense of purpose. Mentorship that is mutual rather than didactic creates sustained relational ties that benefit both parties over time. Refine your digital voice to match your live presence. In emails, messages, and posts, retain the warmth, clarity, and concision you practice in person. Avoid passive-aggressive tones and opt for directness coupled with kindness. When you reply to someone's message, mention a specific detail from their note to demonstrate attention. Small choices in written communication accumulate, just as they do in person, and help build a reputation for reliability and thoughtful engagement across channels. Create learning rituals with others. Invite a small group to share one insight each week or to reflect on a recent challenge and one lesson learned. These rituals normalize continuous growth and create communities bound by shared curiosity. When learning is collective and iterative, people feel safer to reveal imperfections and to experiment with new behaviors, which accelerates growth and deepens connection. Practice the art of gracious closure in conversation topics that could linger. If a topic is drifting into unproductive territory, acknowledge the value of the discussion and propose a focused next step. "This has been useful. Shall we table it and revisit with X data next week?" That move honors the conversation while steering energy toward productive outcomes, avoiding relational fatigue and preserving goodwill. Finally, remember that your magnetism is a reflection of sustained intentionality rather than a fleeting persona. It emerges when you pair inner alignment with dependable outer actions, when your words, gestures, and habits tell a consistent story about who you are. Be patient, show up repeatedly, and treat relationships as long-term practices. Over time, people will not only remember your contributions but also seek your company because being with you makes their own lives richer and more manageable. People are drawn to those who make them feel safer, seen, and understood, and that kind of presence is built deliberately over time through both small acts and steady inner work. Becoming magnetic means refining how you show up in ordinary moments so that extraordinary relationships can grow. It begins with simple consistency, showing up when you said you would, listening without agenda, and following through on the small commitments that others often overlook. These tiny actions accumulate into a reputation for trustworthiness. When people learn they can rely on you for steady attention and honest follow-through, they begin to include you in plans, seek your counsel, and entrust you with the kinds of conversations that deepen connection. Reliability is not glamorous, but it is the backbone of long-term attraction. The way you hold attention matters. Practice focusing on one person at a time in a way that makes them feel prioritized in the moment. That means closing the laptop, silencing the phone, and letting your posture and gaze communicate that this conversation is your priority. The gift of undivided attention is rare and therefore highly valued. It sends a clear message: in a world where people are often distracted, you have chosen to be fully present. That choice creates a magnetic pull because it satisfies a deep human need to be noticed and affirmed. Emotional regulation is central to sustained influence. People who can manage their emotions create environments where others feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable. Build simple practices that stabilize you in moments of stress. Take a breath and name the feeling, shift your posture to ground yourself, and use a short phrase to buy time before reacting. These micro-skills slow down reactivity and allow empathy and curiosity to guide your response. When you can remain steady while others wobble, you become an anchor people turn to in uncertain times. Cultivate the habit of asking better questions. The quality of your questions shapes the depth of the answers you receive. Replace surface-level prompts with invitations that encourage reflection and story. Instead of asking, "How are you?" try something like, "What's been most meaningful for you this week?" or "What lesson surprised you recently?" Such questions shift the conversation from routine updates into richer territory. When people are invited to reflect on meaning, they tend to open up in ways that connect more deeply and reveal values and motivations that facts alone cannot convey. Practice the art of the brief and strategic self-disclosure. Share pieces of your story that are relevant and helpful for others to know, but avoid turning the exchange into an unbalanced monologue. Offer a concise example of a failure and what you learned, or a short admission of nervousness before a big event. These moments of calibrated vulnerability create permission for others to mirror your openness without overwhelming the exchange. The most effective disclosures are well-timed, economical, and oriented toward connection rather than catharsis. Make use of memory as a relational tool. Keep a small mental ledger of the details people mention, names, hobbies, milestones, and preferences, and reference them in subsequent conversations. Saying, "How did your daughter's recital go?" or "Did that course you were taking give you new ideas?" signals that you pay attention and genuinely care. The practical effect is enormous. Remembering someone's detail validates their identity and strengthens bonds, turning casual contacts into meaningful relationships over time. Develop rituals for repair and restoration. When conflicts arise, approach them with a clear framework, acknowledge the harm, take responsibility where appropriate, express regret concisely, and outline steps to make things better. Avoid lengthy justifications or blame shifting. People respect concise accountability because it respects their time and dignity. Repair rituals restore trust and build credibility. They demonstrate that you value the relationship enough to fix what broke rather than sweeping issues under the rug. Be discriminating with your social bandwidth. Not every connection requires the same level of investment. Learn to prioritize relationships that align with your values and where mutuality is present. Invest more in people who reciprocate care and less in ones who chronically take without giving. This is not transactional calculation, it is wise stewardship of your emotional resources. When you allocate attention intentionally, you preserve the quality of your presence for relationships that matter most and deepen the bonds that sustain you. Balance advocacy with humility. When you speak up for your ideas or for others, anchor your words in evidence and experience, but remain open to feedback. Advocacy rooted in curiosity invites collaboration rather than resistance. Frame your contributions as invitations to test a possibility rather than as definitive pronouncements. This posture keeps people engaged because it honors their agency and creates space for joint sense-making. People follow those who make them feel part of the process rather than subjects of it. Practice generosity in ways that scale. Small acts repeated reliably build a reputation for kindness. Send a note of appreciation, recommend a resource that suits someone's needs, make a curated introduction, or offer to help with a short task. These acts are not performative when they're habitual and quiet, they are the currency of strong networks. Over time, consistent generosity makes you someone others want to support and defend. People reciprocate to those who have made tangible investments in their lives. Sharpen your capacity to read group dynamics. In any gathering, notice who is left out, who monopolizes airtime, and where the conversation could benefit from a redirect. Intervene gently to include quieter voices, summarize points to reduce confusion, and ask probing questions that invite variety of thought. When you steward group energy well, you are perceived as both generous and competent. People appreciate the person who improves the social experience for everyone rather than simply serving their own presence. Manage your reputation intentionally. Reputation accrues slowly and can be shaped by the narratives you reinforce through consistent action. Decide what you want people to say about you when you're not in the room. Are you thoughtful, dependable, curious, kind? Then steward that image through everyday behaviors that align with your chosen traits. Speak less about your intentions and more through repetitive, observable actions. Reputation management is less about image-making than about building small proofs of character that others can rely on. Experiment with small public risks. Put a short piece of your thinking or a personal lesson into public view and observe how people respond. Vulnerable but constructive contributions can attract like-minded people and accelerate relationship building. Public sharing should be purposeful and measured, aim for clarity and usefulness rather than attention-grabbing extremes. When you model learning and curiosity publicly, you signal that growth is more important than perfection, and that attracts collaborators who share that mindset. Practice gratitude rituals in public and private. A regular habit of expressing appreciation, whether a quick public shout-out to a teammate or a private note to someone who helped, builds goodwill and encourages a culture of recognition. Gratitude lubricates relationships and increases the likelihood that others will continue to invest in you reciprocally. Keep gratitude specific and timely to maximize its impact. Refine how you handle praise and critique. When receiving praise, accept it with simplicity and warmth. When offered critique, listen fully, ask clarifying questions, and thank the person for their perspective before deciding how to respond. This posture of receptivity separates the defensive reflex from reflective response and demonstrates maturity. People trust those who can receive feedback and grow from it rather than defend their identity at every turn. Cultivate a sense of narrative continuity in relationships. Help others see how small actions connect to larger trajectories by pointing out progress and recurring strengths. When someone feels seen as part of a story of growth, their trust in you deepens. Use phrases that highlight continuity. I've noticed how you've consistently handled X, and it speaks to your discipline, to reinforce patterns of positive behavior and signal that you track long-term development. Mind the power of emotional pacing. Not every interaction needs high emotional intensity. Learn to match intensity to context. In moments requiring problem-solving, keep the tone practical and focused. When someone seeks solace, slow down and create space for feeling. Calibrating your emotional delivery to the context helps people trust that you can offer both competence and care in the right measure. Led by modeling curiosity and generosity in conflict. When tensions arise, ask probing questions that uncover underlying needs and invite constructive problem solving. Offer small concessions when appropriate to break impasses and model a return to mutuality. People follow those who demonstrate the courage to prioritize relationship repair over the need to be right. Protect your voice by practicing verbal clarity. When making a request or offering feedback, be specific about the behavior you observed, the impact it had, and the action you desire. Clear communications reduce misunderstandings and avoid the emotional entanglement that vague language invites. People appreciate clarity because it respects their ability to act. Invest in cross-context skills. The people who can move fluidly between professional, social, and casual settings have an advantage because they build diverse relational capital. Practice translating your warmth and attention into each context while adjusting for norms. The ability to be equally present at a dinner table and in a strategy meeting makes you a versatile and sought-after companion. Approach mentorship as mutual learning. When you mentor someone, treat the relationship as reciprocal, you teach and you learn. Invite mentors to challenge your assumptions and to offer perspectives that expand your thinking. This reciprocal curiosity enriches both parties and builds relationships rooted in mutual respect rather than hierarchical dependency. Keep learning about people. Read broadly about psychology, culture, and communication to expand your toolkit and to develop empathy for differences. The more you understand diverse human experiences, the better you can connect across divides. Lifelong curiosity about people keeps your social skills adaptive and prevents stagnation. Finally, remember that true magnetism is less about accruing a larger audience and more about deepening the quality of your closest relationships. Aim to be present, generous, and reliable for a core group of people, and let that depth radiate outward. When you pair inner alignment with habitual outer actions, your presence becomes a resource others willingly seek. Over time, the cumulative effect of consistent small acts, thoughtful listening, and generous leadership creates a life rich with meaningful relationships that sustain and inspire you. You have reached the moment where practice meets patience. Becoming the person others want to be around does not happen overnight. It is the result of 1,000 quiet choices repeated until they become your default way of moving through the world. The work is both outward and inward. The outer skills of listening, presence, and clear communication must be matched by inner habits that regulate your energy, align with your values, and sustain your generosity. When those two tracks converge, your presence moves from occasional charisma to dependable magnetism. Start by making small bets on consistency rather than big dramatic changes. Pick 3 practices you can realistically keep doing for months: a short morning centering ritual, a daily act of attentive listening, and a weekly follow-up habit that reinforces your reliability. These are not tricks to impress, they are reliable patterns that signal to others who you are and what you value. When you choose consistency over intensity, your credibility accumulates in a way that one-off displays never can. People remember patterns, not performances. Practice the discipline of curiosity as both a posture and a habit. Curiosity softens judgment and opens doors into other people's inner worlds. Ask questions that invite stories and reflection, and then pause to listen deeply. Resist the urge to immediately offer solutions. In many cases people are looking for a witness, not a fixer. When you listen without agenda, you create psychological safety. That safety allows others to be more authentic, and authenticity is magnetic because it is rare and trustworthy. Manage the emotional temperature of your interactions. Emotional regulation is not the suppression of feeling, it is the capacity to name what you feel, take a breath, and act from choice rather than reactivity. When you can remain steady during someone else's turbulence, you become an anchor. Practice simple in-the-moment techniques. Slow exhalations to calm your nervous system, a brief mental labeling of the emotion you observe, and a shift in posture that signals openness. These micro-actions create room for thoughtful responses and reduce the likelihood of escalations. Refine your stories and your moments of vulnerability so they serve connection rather than self-focus. Short, well-placed personal anecdotes that reveal learning, struggle, or growth invite reciprocal disclosure without overwhelming the listener. Vulnerability is inviting when it is manageable. Calibrated honesty builds trust because it demonstrates both courage and respect for the listener's capacity to hold you. Over time, mutual vulnerability becomes the soil in which deep relationships grow. Honor boundaries as an expression of care for yourself and others. Saying no with clarity preserves your capacity to be generous in sustainable ways. Boundaries allow you to show up consistently, which is ultimately more generous than sporadic people-pleasing. Communicate your limits with warmth and brief explanation when needed. Boundaries are not walls, they are fences that define where you can give well without depleting yourself. Value the quiet power of follow-through. A short message after a conversation, a timely resource, or a small introduction can mean as much as a long speech. These low-effort, high-impact gestures signal that you care and that you are reliable. People make mental ledgers of trust, and consistent follow-through fills the account. If you want to be someone people turn to, be the person who remembers and acts on the small commitments you make. Shape your online presence to mirror your in-person integrity. Digital interactions are easier to get wrong because nuance is lost, yet the same rules apply: show curiosity, offer value, and be concise. When responding to someone online, reference a detail from their comment to show you were listening. When you disagree, prioritize clarity and respect over cleverness. If you share content publicly, aim to be useful rather than performative. People who translate helpfulness into consistent online behavior build long-term trust across contexts. Design conversational structures that encourage depth. Begin with an orienting sentence that explains why the conversation matters, use a couple of open questions to invite sharing, and close with a clear next step or takeaway. This scaffolding is invisible when it works, yet it dramatically increases the usefulness of interactions. It helps you avoid drifting into unproductive territory and leaves both parties with a sense of momentum rather than ambiguity. For video or public formats, this structure also retains attention because it signals progress and purpose. Use gratitude as a relational amplifier. Express appreciation that names specific behaviors and outcomes. This specificity teaches others what you value and reinforces positive actions. A quick, timely expression of thanks has outsized influence on morale and loyalty. Make gratitude a public habit when appropriate and a private practice consistently. Both forms feed relational goodwill. Practice receiving with grace. Many people are generous, but few accept generosity comfortably. When someone offers praise or help, respond with a simple, sincere thank you. Accepting gifts of attention or assistance models self-respect and allows others to experience joy in giving. This reciprocity is the bloodstream of healthy relationships. Led with humility matched by competence. Admitting ignorance or asking for help does not undermine your credibility, it enhances it when paired with a willingness to learn and with dependable follow-through. People trust those who can hold their limits and still contribute meaningfully. When you combine expertise with openness, you create collaborative influence rather than coercive authority. Create rituals that mark transitions and preserve your energy. Small practices: 3 breaths before entering a meeting, a 2-line intention before starting a recording, a brief reflection after a significant conversation, prepare you to show up deliberately and help you recover afterward. These acts anchor your presence and make your contributions more consistent. Make teaching a part of your practice. When you explain what you do and why it matters in short, practical steps, you reinforce your own habits and scale your influence. Share small exercises with people who follow your content or with colleagues at work. People engage when they can try something immediately and feel the effect. Short challenges, daily prompts, or a simple habit tracker help audience members practice alongside you and create better retention for video content. Curate the environments you inhabit. The people closest to you shape your mood, norms, and possibilities. Invest in relationships that challenge and replenish you. Reduce exposure to chronic negativity that erodes your baseline energy. This curation is not exclusionary, it is stewardship of your capacity to act from the best version of yourself. Pay attention to pacing and intensity. Not every conversation needs a high-energy pitch. Learn to match your emotional output to the context. In some moments, your presence is most magnetic when it is calm and quiet. In others, your energy is contagious and uplifting. Read the room and adjust accordingly, catalyzing the tone that best serves the situation. Remember that influence is a byproduct of trust, not its substitute. Persuasion rooted in pressure or manipulation can produce temporary compliance, but it cannot build durable relationships. Focus on creating conditions where people volunteer their trust because they feel respected, seen, and capable. That kind of influence multiplies because it mobilizes others rather than controlling them. Embrace the long horizon in relationships. Quick wins are pleasant, but sustained care creates depth. Follow up, celebrate incremental progress, and show up during ordinary seasons. People remember who remain steady during slow times. Longevity in attention transforms acquaintances into allies and transactions into true partnerships. Measure growth not by immediate popularity but by the quality of your daily exchanges. Notice whether people confide in you more often, whether colleagues seek your counsel, or whether friends include you in meaningful rituals. Those are the indicators that your presence has shifted from incidental to essential. If you are creating video content, design episodes to reward sustained attention. Begin with a short hook that promises value, follow with a clear promise of what viewers will learn, and deliver concise, repeatable practices. Use short pauses and reflective prompts to give listeners space to absorb ideas. Encourage small in-video exercises that viewers can try immediately. These moments increase engagement and extend watch time because they transform passive viewing into active practice. Keep iterating with humility. Solicit feedback from trusted people about how your presence lands. Ask what feels inviting, what feels coming on too strong, and where you might be clearer. Receive that input without defensiveness and make tiny adjustments. The willingness to iterate publicly models growth and invites others into the learning process. Finally, be patient and compassionate with yourself. Social skill development is not linear. There will be days when you misstep, when your energy is low, or when you unintentionally prioritize performance over presence. Treat those moments as data, not destiny. Reflect briefly, extract one lesson, and move forward. When you accumulate small improvements and forgive yourself between attempts, you will find your presence shifting toward the magnetic steadiness that people value most. You do not create magnetism by becoming someone else, you create it by practicing the best parts of who you already are with greater consistency, clarity, and courage. Show up kindly, listen with curiosity, keep your promises, and protect your energy. Over time, those choices add up to a life where people want to be around you not for the sparks you produce but for the steady light you provide. If you share these practices on platforms like Momentum Audiobooks, focus on giving viewers clear, immediately useful steps they can try today. That practical generosity will build engagement, trust, and a community that grows together.